A big accident, an anonymous note, and many friends pointing fingers at each other. It's the premise of the reboot, requel, sequel. We'll talk more about that. It's I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025. We'll be back in just a moment. Yes, it is officially out in theaters now. I Know What You Did Last Summer's 2025. I want to call it a legacy sequel or requels, as they like to call them. Now that we've seen it, we know a little bit more about it. I know we talked a couple of weeks ago when we did the review of the original in depth about this as well, too. And there's a lot to discuss. But before we do that, intros are always good. For those who are new here, I am Bobby Munson. And right beside me, it's Astrid Pizarro. Astrid, how are you doing today?
Doing great so far. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, especially whenever we get to talk horror movies, slasher movies. It's always a blast. They're not always the best slasher movies every time, but we got to talk about them regardless. And this one, there's a lot of divided people when it comes to this movie in particular. A lot of people torn about this ending that we're going to talk about, and sometimes the writing. And I think that's where I've talked to you in depth about this already. The writing threw me off a little bit on this. I know previously when we were talking about the original I Know What You Did Last Summer, I mentioned about this trailer almost making it seem like I knew who that killer was. And I happen to be right on one sense of this. But I want to know, before we even get into the depths of this movie, what were your overall arcing thoughts? Like, is this a movie that you did enjoy? Is this a revisitable movie? And how does it rank in terms of up against the other I Know What You Did Last Summer films?
I feel we're ranking them because I've only rewatched the first one just to have a refresher before I watch this one. So I haven't rewatched the second and the third one. I know the third one we really barely acknowledged as it is, so it's
So
fine.
did this movie.
Uh, yeah, it's like it's okay. But overall, so I was torn about it because I liked most of the movie. I just had moments that I thought, I guess, one of the, like, at least, I don't want to say both, but I sort of both people involved here. And then in my mind, I kind of told myself, "There's no way that's it," and I kind of put it in the back burner. And then I decided to go with somebody else, and I kept going. It's like, no, it has to be this person. It has to be that person. And then when it was revealed, I went, "Oh, okay, I was right." Weird, because I'm really right when I pick people to begin with. So
Yeah.
this is one of those. I also love the fact that they have a post-credit scene. I wish I would have known about that before the movie came out, because I didn't know about that, and then I realized that when I saw a lot of people staying there in the movie theater, and I'm like, let me Google it before I leave. And I'm glad I Googled it and I stayed and I watched it. And I wish I would have advertised that a little bit more as well, because I don't think I have seen anybody post that there's a post-credit scene.
Yeah, see, and that's where it got me. I didn't know about it either, so I was just quick to hop up and leave, because most horror movies don't leave with a post-credit scene at all, kind of thing. So it's like, okay, we're good. I walked out, and nobody in our theater was really sticking around. Like, and sometimes, like, locally here, I find almost every movie there's those few people who linger just in case they're not in a rush to get out. Where I'm like, no, I want to get out of traffic. I don't want to be stuck here waiting to get out of this place if I don't have to, kind of thing. If I know there's post credits, I'll stay for it. But if I don't think there is, I'll walk out. I walked out, and then you told me about this, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I have gone and found somebody who put it up on YouTube. So I have seen the post-credit scene now. So we will talk about that in a bit as well. But I mean, when we're putting this together, I Know What You Did Last Summer, I mentioned that I was hoping this one would erase some of the past. Like, this would almost act like, like Halloween did, where it kind of took on a new series that takes place after the original. I thought maybe that's the direction they would go. Not the direction they would go. There is actually acknowledgement not only to the original, but also to I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Almost like a brief passing that they acknowledge that I Will Always Know What You Did Last Summer's direct-to-video sequel ended up happening, but really not a lot of mention on it, because there isn't a whole lot tying it to that other than the legacy of Ben the Fisherman, the original one that was a killer in the original series. So this one is technically the fourth installment of the I Know What You Did Last Summer series. This one co-written by Jennifer Caitlin Robinson and Leah McKendrick. Jennifer Caitlin Robinson also directed this one. And really the same premise is what we got in the original I Know What You Did Last Summer for the most part. So we start off with a group of friends. They're, getting towards the 4th, or they're on the 4th of July. They want to have a good time. They know they're going to be heading out their different directions soon as people grow up. They go for a little bit of a drive. They're going to go and have some fun, smoke a little bit of their garden blend out on the side of the road, and they pull over on what's known as what with the Devil's Pass or something like that it's called there. Which, I mean, why you choose to park there in the middle of the road kind of was like, well, you're asking for trouble already. And so they kind of start alluding to something's going to happen. But unlike the original one where it was a drinking and driving accident that ended up occurring, this one was from swerving when they saw them parked on the corner of the road there, and they end up going over the top of this rail after this group tries to help them. What I found funny about this was, okay, some of them were like, like especially like Stevie, for example, saying like, I've just got my life back on track. I can't have, this reported and stuff like that. I'll get in a lot of trouble for this kind of thing. I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you did try to help though. I almost feel like the way the accident was set up, that the police could have been contacted and you could have said they found this person's vehicle hanging there. They try to help, but it went over the edge. No one would have been any the wiser. Like, this is not a place that's got security cameras lying around to catch all this or anything like that. I thought this one, even more so than the first one, was a lot more silly why they didn't just immediately report the accident to the police themselves, kind of thing. But I guess when you know the ending and the killers behind it, that okay, maybe there's a little bit more sense to why the reports weren't there or why they were panicking a little bit more about it. So we then flash forward a year in time. Things have changed. Of course, this has driven everybody apart to a certain degree. They all end up coming back together. And the all too notorious note comes about, I Know What You Did Last Summer. It kind of kickstarts things off. I felt like the premise of this was started off, interestingly enough, very similar to the original one. And very much like the original one, it takes a long time before we get into any of the actual slasher side of things. It was very, very warm and bubbly for the beginning of this movie, at least the first third of the movie, I'd say. Very, very much so. I was okay, we got to get invested into the characters, but the writing, I think, let some of them down. I don't know if the characters were as strong as they could have been, and it's no knock at the people in this movie. The people in this movie did just fine, in my opinion. I thought they were fine at doing all the roles. I think that the writing let them down at times, and I think that the reveal also was let down a little bit by the writing, but the overall premise was fine. How do you feel, before we get to the kills and stuff, like how did you feel about that first third, the setup to this whole thing?
I feel like compared to the original, like this set of I want to say kids, but I feel like they were more innocent than in the first one. That's to me that was a major difference, because it wasn't like they hit the person, they didn't hit the car on purpose or anything like that. He just happens to be swerving. And then not only that, but they were actually trying to help. And like you said, they could have been gone with like, hey, this person was swerving. We tried to help them out. And then the car just fell. And it would have been believable in that aspect of it. And the point that they kept insisting of like, oh no, we're not gonna say that, we're gonna get in trouble. It's like, no, because there's no other evidence aside from like the car that something happened here. Who are they gonna believe? Especially when Teddy's father is the one that's really, I don't want to say in charge, but he's the one with the money and the influence here. So who are really gonna believe? At first though, when he said he called the cops, I didn't think he actually called them, because I feel like that phone call was so quickly done that I was like, there's no way he called the cops. He just said that to shut everybody else up so they could leave. But then once I start driving off and I see the cops and the ambulance coming, it's like, okay, he did call. So I was like, that would have been a little bit suspicious if he hadn't, to begin with. But like you said, I just felt like there was particular moments, like for example, to bring her up here, the podcaster, I'm trying to remember her name, I'm trying to find it there. The podcaster was one, for example, that I liked that aspect of it. I feel like that's something like they included that's more like modern, to put it like that, in the movie. But I wish I would have like known a little bit more about her before everything happened. And I feel like I like the concept of it, that she goes to towns and she talks about the murders, and they're like, oh, she knows about this. And I wish we would have like learned a little bit more of like maybe she wants to get to know these kids because they're from this town and they know the people that were, it happened to in the first one. Like, dig a little bit more into her before, like, really cutting her off in that aspect of it. I feel like I would have liked that a little bit more there. But then I feel like also compared to the original, they killed more innocent people here than in the original one. Because in the original, there's only
Mhm.
one person that just happens to pass by, doesn't know anything, they got killed. But in this one, there's actually no, there's two victims in the first one. But in this one, I think there's three of them, if I'm not mistaken, that were not involved whatsoever and still got killed. Because it's the podcaster, the fiance, and I feel like I'm missing somebody else.
Podcaster, fiance, definitely bit the dust. I'm trying to think who else did as well too. There's definitely more than that because
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot more overall kills in this movie than in
Mm-hmm.
the original movie because
Yep.
the original one really you have, and I can't remember the actor's name. I know that he used to be in the show Roseanne and I think The Big Bang Theory. He happened to be the one that drove by. He ends up being one of the victims, and then of course you have both Sarah Michelle Gellar and Ryan Phillippe's characters that pass away in that one, and then
Mm-hmm.
of course the woman who plays Sarah Michelle Gellar's sister in the
Yep.
original one, and I think that was pretty much it for the
Yep.
death scenes in the original one. Where this one you had, and I kept calling, I told you this too, I called them the Expendables, the characters that it's
Yeah.
like they had no value other
Mm-hmm.
than being side characters, like the sudden
Mm-hmm.
new fiance all of a sudden at the beginning of the movie. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, he's a dead man. Like, he's so expendable that he's not going to.
Yep.
And then I remembered, I'm like, oh, we've seen his death
The
already. This
trailer.
was in the
Mm-hmm.
trailer. And then when
Yep.
it plays out, I'm like, it's a cool scene. Don't get me wrong. But I'm like, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen it already. So there wasn't as much wow factor in it as what I would have
Mm-hmm.
hoped. But it is it's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie, I think, where when he turns around, this all of a sudden the spear comes through his chest and everything, and just that whole slow pulling him in, and like I thought that was a nice touch. Plus, cutting back to the scenes of upstairs with the bath bomb and the bathtub and the meditation music,
Yeah.
all of that was so cool and so well done. But yeah, as for it seems like it had no oomph because all the main characters seemed like for
Mm-hmm.
the most part they were not gonna get knocked off. I mean, later on we had a couple, but not to a crazy extent either. I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of surprised by the fact that there was just no, with how many people live in this area, that there was just no factor being played in terms of knocking off anybody that had value to the main cast.
Yeah, that's something that surprised me about because I kept thinking of like the original one in my mind while watching this, and I thought I think his name was Brandon, if I'm not mistaken, the first one, and then the sister that got killed, um, I think it's Elsa. So it's like those were like as you call it expendables, and then this one, the fiance, the podcast, and I feel like I'm missing somebody else here too. Um, so it's like I feel like usually I don't want to say all of them, but I'd say at least most movies, the person will target those particular people involved in this aspect of it. And I get the fact that they want Danica to feel a little bit of that loss that the person felt by losing a family member, but at the same time, I feel like his impact is not the same because he's not part of the group, and he wasn't involved in the first one to be in the first in the accident to begin with. So that's the only part, but I definitely wish we would have known a little bit more about the podcaster in itself. I did like her scene though, because I like the fact that she comes in, they play a little bit of her podcast. She has a show with Helen, and I was in my mind thinking, oh, this is how they include Helen in the movie. I love this. So in my mind, I'm like thinking, okay, I love this already. I love the fact that she's a fan to it. And the part that made me laugh though is one of those things that she is very loud when it comes to her podcast, but then when it comes to like facing it in real life, it wasn't the same thing at all. And it was so ironic to see that in person. It's like she is that kind of person who like, yeah, the killer can do this and the killer does that. She's like, we're all discussing every time that she goes to about the killings that she's seen involving the cases, but when she gets to face it in real life, she runs the other way. And so it's just ironically when you think about it that way. But I like the fact that she was a fan, that she had the shirt and everything like that, and it's like, oh yeah, that's in my, I think she said it was an Etsy shop or something that she had, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I like that kind of like feel to it, because that makes it more like modern, because we do see stuff like that nowadays of like the shirts with the fandoms and things like that. Um, I feel like the thing here though, I like the her and Ava, I think it's her name if I'm not mistaken, when they get chased off here because they go to shit it was supposed to be Shivers before, and it's not anymore because the towns were modernized. And I like this aspect of it because now it's a completely different town from what it was before. and it's more of a tourist attraction. It shows it to me. It's a little bit more modern in that aspect as well. The way it has changed because of the popularity, and I like that the fact that she tries to tell her, it's like, oh yeah, this is where it happened, and this is how it goes, and explaining everything to Ava. Even though Ava's from the town, the podcaster is the one explaining everything to her about the original killings. But I love the chasing here. I feel like there's moments that even Ava was so smart the way she was handling everything, going after the person, not afraid of actually hitting them back, and trying to find a way to hide, trying to find a way to run off. And even that moment where the little cage drops on her, she's like very quick about opening the door and trying to find a way out of there. But and to put it here, this is what I will start with the spoilers. This is the part that kind of gave it away for me in the aspect of it in two ways. First, because they're trying to call out to one of her friends, and the only friend that shows up is Stevie for her
Yeah.
friends. But then when the podcaster gets killed, you can see that she took off the mask from the person, and she goes, "You," as if she knows them. And I was like, she's not gonna know anybody from the recent group because she's only met Ava from the airplane and Milo that dropped her off. She doesn't know anybody else from Ava's friend group. So I was
Yeah.
like, so it has to be somebody from before somehow. And this is what really gave it away for me to begin with.
Yeah. And for me as well too. I mean, I have my thoughts. We talked about this when we reviewed the original one.
Mm-hmm.
I said from the trailer, Ray seemed all too happy to be involved, kind of thing, where they show Julie and it's like, I don't really want to get involved with this again, kind of thing. And I'm like, that seemed odd. And then of course we have that scene, and that kind of was a giveaway. I already felt like Stevie was connected as well too, because her connection to Ray. I also felt that, there's the scene at the beginning before the accident. They're talking about, oh, Stevie's just got her life back together. And oh, she's kind of that outcast. And when we come back a year later, it's like, oh, you're still friends with Stevie. And it's like Stevie seems to be the focal point of, like, even though she's not the main girl or what you would consider to be the main final girl of this movie, her name gets brought up so much as this like outcast to the group that I'm just like, I was like, you're an outcast. And then you're also this like adopted daughter of sorts to Ray. I was like, that seems odd. And then, yeah, like you said, her showing up at the scene with the podcaster, and then the podcaster opens up the fisherman's slicker to see who it was. It says, "Oh, you?" And I was just like, "Oh no, they didn't. They didn't. Please tell me they didn't." Like, and I. Again, like, it didn't ruin the overall whole movie experience for me, but I was like, it's so obvious. Like, I said to you too, I said they might as well have called it I Know What You Foreshadowed last summer, because they were just giving everything away as this went along. And then on top of it too, the other things that puzzled me, I was like, they're having a town meeting about, what's going on, and they want to cover this up because they don't want this happening again. And then without anybody ever reaching out to Ray, or Eddie mentioned that he even exists in this area still, he just pops into the town meeting, and it's like, you're going to deny that this ever happened around here? Stop trying to cover it up. And I'm like, so he lives there and he has a bar there, yet they've tried to like erase the past of it. Why did they ever let him take out a business registration to have a bar in the place that he had this happen to him in? And then the other thing was, like, when Julie starts getting involved, and I love Jennifer Love Hewitt, her efforts in this, and I love that she was in it, and I love that once we get to talking about it, we probably are going to see her in a follow-up to this movie as well too. But they could have given her some better lines. Like, it started off great, like she's in her class and she's talking about the way the psyche can make somebody, like, trauma can affect the psyche over time. I'm like, well, I mean, now you're alluding to it being Ray as well too. And then when they go to talk to her, and they just suggest that it's like, okay, a fisherman's after us or whatever. We know you went through this too. And she turns around with, I just have one question. What did you do last summer? And I'm like, nobody said they did anything last summer. They're just talking about a fisherman. I mean, you're coming at some pretty big conclusions here. Like, I was just like, and then on top of it, then they start going into the whole Ray and Julie, because again, I had even forgot this, that they got married at the end of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. I totally forgot about that. But their only way to follow this up was they're divorced now because reasons. Like, there's no real explanation. What happened? Why are they separated? Why don't they talk to each other anymore? Like, what along the line happened to cause this rift? And we still don't really necessarily know. And there was like no real impact when Julie finally finds out that Ray is behind this stuff. It's like she shows up there to save the day, which, okay, cool. But then it was like she's just like, Ray, why, stop it, be nice, like it was kind of like, yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
felt like there should have been more emotion. They should have let her really let loose, like Ray coming in, he should have taken a couple swings at her or something like that. Instead, they wanted to go for that nostalgic, like having her say the line. That's what I felt like. It was like it was all set up just to
Mm-hmm.
be able to what are you waiting for, huh? Which I get it. I get the nostalgia part of that. It's understandable, but I don't think it was necessary, or you could have fit it in a way that played out better. I think the scene there between the two of them could have been better fleshed out. Um, I don't dislike Stevie and Ray as the killers. I think that the idea behind it was fantastic, and I will argue that with anybody on the internet that's complaining about it. So many people are saying it kills the legacy. It doesn't. I think the explanation that somebody's trauma can get to them so much that they would snap is fine. I think Ray's reasoning could have been a little better, other than, oh, Stevie said these kids picked on her, so we decided to kill them. Kind of thing, like
Mm-hmm.
I think that he could have come forward and said, I presented this idea. If he would have said that he was tired of the legacy of what happened to him being completely overshadowed by the town as if it didn't
Mm-hmm.
exist, and erase them, like he says to Julie, they're trying to erase us. I liked that more than I did his explanation of
Mm-hmm.
working with Stevie, because he could have been using Stevie. This was his adopted daughter. Her dad passed away. She had problems with drugs. He took her in and stuff. He could have, come up with this whole plot with her. She had these friends that, had kind of abandoned her, and like he could have planted in her head, like, we can do something about this. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have made for a much more interesting plot at that time. I'm still puzzled about why he chose to shoot her off on the boat so easily, kind of thing. Like, I was at that moment, I was half expecting him to turn around to Danica
And
with the
shoot her.
gun and stuff like
Yes.
that, or whatever. Or, yeah, sorry. And I was just like, wow, why, like, what? That kind of thing. And I'm just like, there's
Mm-hmm.
no way, like, this MFer is behind this. Like, there's like, what
Mm-hmm.
is happening? Like, there's no way he just shot his supposed adopted daughter, who is doing all
Mm-hmm.
these things, kind of thing, to save somebody he barely even knows. That doesn't make sense. And yeah. And then of all the things, she calls Julie James, not the police, to say, hey, by the way, Stevie was the killer and she's in the ocean somewhere, possibly still alive. Come find her, kind of thing. Like, I'm with Ray heading back to his bar, kind of thing. No, she calls Julie to say, oh, by the way, Stevie was the killer and everything like that. And then Julie just all of a sudden, ding, light bulb goes on. It's like, oh my God, Ray's helping her, kind of thing. She runs to the rescue. I'm like, some of it was a little bit silly. And also,
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about this. We feel like there's two different movies here. Like, there's two different endings, and one of them we didn't get to see. And I think that one involves the
Mm-hmm.
church connection and Stevie, because we find out that she was
Yeah.
connected to the guy who passed away in the vehicle. She's connected to the preacher at the church and stuff that we find out is dead, almost like a distraction while Ray's able to get out to the
Mm-hmm.
boat and everything. I almost feel there was a different version of this where the pastor was involved in terms of the killing. And I know you've got more information on that, so I'm going to turn that back over to you. I want to hear more about this.
This is one of the, I think he's the other one that I kind of is an expendable in that aspect of it, because they showed him one scene before and I geeked out because for me, I'm a One Tree Hill girly and he's from One Tree Hill. So when I saw him, I went, he doesn't have facial hair, but it's him. And I remember watching him in the Olsen Twins movies where he was a lot younger too. So when I saw him, I was so happy. But then he becomes such a background character at that point that I almost forgot about him in some aspects. And then the girls go to the church and ask him for that book, Ava and Danica, and at that point they show a picture of him and the person from the accident. But I thought there's no way he's the killer because we would have seen a little bit more of a connection earlier than just the picture. And I feel like they're not going to give it away to the public, to put it like that, to the viewers, with just a picture. So I was like, it can't be him. That's why I took him off my list as soon as I saw the picture. But then when they go back to the church to like go in and ask him about what's going on, and they see him, he's already killed. I hate the fact that the kill was off screen, first of all. And
Yeah.
to me, he became an expendable in that aspect of in that list. Because, and again, he was not involved in the accident. So what was he killed? And we didn't get like any reasoning to as to why that happened. You can assume because they're family, most likely. But I would have liked it to have had a scene with her and him, or even Ray if it was Ray, and show us why they decided to kill him to begin with. And I was very disappointed that it happened off screen and there was no connection. It just like, here, he's already dead. And I'm like, what the heck? I wanted to know more about him. And I feel like we didn't. And that's why I want to know if the alternate ending has to do more with that aspect of it, because it's something that it made me want to know more about his character. We didn't get to know that about him. And the other scene that really gave it away for me was I forgot where the rest of the characters were at, but Stevie. Oh, Ava's like, oh, I'm gonna call Julie, and then Stevie's like, oh, I'm gonna call Ray, and I'm like, why you need to call Ray though? She's already calling Julie. You just need one person here. And then at one point, then Stevie's trying to call people, and she's with Ray, and I'm like, why are you with him? And that was another reason that I was like, that's very weird. And that was the other part that gave it away for me in the end. But like you said, I kept thinking like when they're at the boat that he was gonna turn around and be kind of like the Billy Loomis kind of thing and be like, we'll
Mhm.
go a little mad sometimes and shoot at Ava behind him instead of shooting at her. So I was waiting for that moment too. And the moment that you said it is like I saw him there and I was like, okay, when he shoots at Stevie and she falls to the water, I kept thinking, okay, then how are we gonna really end this? Because it just feels awkward to just finish it here. And then in that moment when Ava calls Julie and she goes, "Oh yeah, I'm with Ray here," and then we're shutting out, and then he does a little move with his arm that I was like, "Oh, he's the one from the restaurant." So I was right; it was him. This is the
Mhm.
moment when the podcaster takes it up and she goes, "Oh, it's you," and I'm like, "I knew that was him." And the moment he's like, "Oh, no, I know you know that it's me," and I was like, "Shoot." This is what to me, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one of the very, 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 very few times that the victim becomes the killer in the end. I feel like I rarely see that in horror movies. And
Mhm.
it's one of those things like that's the reason why I took him off my list to begin with. Is it's like, no, he's a victim. And I feel like usually the victims carry on. But to have the victim become the killer at the end was something that really surprised me in that aspect of it. That's why I took him off my list to begin with. But I definitely wish we would have known a little bit more about the part about the church aspect of it too. Just because I noticed that when the girls go get the book, there's a lot of ladies from the church that says, "Oh yeah, we have somebody from our church that passed away last year," and that's when they go, "Oh wait, there's a connection with the guy from the car accident in the church too." So I really wanted them to dig a little bit more into that and that side of it, and they didn't. So it's like, why mention if you're gonna give us just a little glimpse to it? That's what I feel like. Hope that the movie has some kind of extended version because I would like to see a little bit more of those puzzle pieces we kind of missed out on in the movie there. But overall, I the other reason why I thought about it has to be two people was when they start going off for the guys. They start trying to kill the guys off in the group. The person seems really tall, and I'm like, I know Stevie seems kind of tall, but not tall enough to be able to take over these guys the way that like a Teddy was punching the killer. I was like, there's no way Stevie could take this. That's what made me think I'm like, it can't be her, and I started doubting myself because of the way the guys got killed. And when Milo got choked out, and I was like, yeah, there's no way the girl would do this when he's a little bit more like the killer's a little bit taller than Milo is. But that's what made me kind of like go back and forth on it. I was like, I still like the reveal at the end just because I kind of took her off my list for a while. So at the same time, I was surprised when it did happen. I was like, oh, I'm glad I was right that it was her. Um, but yeah, to me, the surprising part with Ray was seeing that change going from victim to killer and seeing how so many years later it affected him to the point that he decided to do it himself as well. Like you said, I do agree with that. I would have liked more of a fight between him and Julie because thinking of like you decided to go to do this after everything that happened to us and the trauma that we had to go through, and you're gonna give it to somebody else now. I would have liked her to fight a little bit more before that happened, but I did like the fact that Ava decided to defend Julie at the end because Julie had been helping her too to begin with, and they made that connection early on. But again, overall, I enjoyed it. I would definitely would like to watch it again, and I hope when they do digital that we do get the alternate ending because I would love to see what else they had in mind. And they decided to go with this one.
I'm curious too, and I hope that it doesn't come out and that version ends up being something people like more, and it kind of kills plans and stuff like that because they can't really
Mm-hmm.
backtrack. They've gone with what they've gone with. They have to roll with it now.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was planned that it was originally the preacher or anything like that, my question is like, there's a lot of people in that picture aside from Stevie, our guy who passed away,
Mm-hmm.
and the preacher in there. You know, how much did they know about these things? The only thing I can think of about the preacher being passed away, it almost had to have been Ray who did it. I feel like he did it because Stevie probably
Mhm,
couldn't have brought herself to do it, especially with being somebody that helped her with her drug problems and everything like that.
mhm,
I feel he did it to make it look like he could set Stevie up. I feel like everything he'd set in place was to set Stevie up and everything, and he must have assumed that she was going to die with the gunshot, but maybe because it only hit the shoulder area and she hit the water, that, you know, she wasn't dead in the end anyway. And that's the other thing, is like, after all is said and done, and we get to the very end and we find out that Ava's there, Danica's there, and they're chatting and they're sitting down, like basically just having a chat on the
Like
beach, a
nothing
little lunch
happened.
and stuff, like as if like you didn't just go through the worst experience of your life. And it's like, oh, by the way, Stevie's still alive. Oh, really? And they just kind of laugh it off. I'm like, what the
Right?
fuck? I'm like, why are you laughing this off?
And
Like,
on top of it, just Danica like going ashore and being like, somebody go to the hospital, please, my guts are all over the ocean," or whatever it was that she said. I was like, how do you keep her alive after that? I was like, I don't understand. And they just started talking and making fun of the situation. I was like, I get that people do dark humor to get out of the situation sometimes, but it just felt like unnecessary at that point when they're just laughing it off that Stevie's alive. I was like, why would you laugh it up when she tried to kill you and she was your friend not 5 minutes
yeah,
ago?
yeah,
It almost made no sense, like timeline wise. Um, but I also wanted to talk about the post credit scene because
yes,
I'm
let's do.
for the people that haven't seen it. Like I said, I googled it before I left, and then in the scene we do see Brandy, which I was glad because I know Brandy had posted one of her pictures with her and Jennifer Love Hewitt from the original movie. So I was like curious how she was playing a role into this. Oh, and I forgot about Helen as well, which I want to talk about. um and her character, Brandy's character Carla, is watching the news, talking about what just happened with Julie and Ray, and she's like, oh, everybody's always trying to kill that girl. I love that, the line automatically. And she hears a doorbell ring and she's kind of like giving it that like scare face of like maybe she's next because of the Julie connection. But when she opens the door, Julie's behind the door with the hat on, and she's like, do you mind if I come in? Comes in and she has a picture from them in the original one, which is the one that Brandy posted, and
Mhm.
Brandy's face has an X on it, and at the back of it says it isn't over. And Jennifer Love Hewitt looks at her and she looks at her and she goes, "What are we gonna F up this time?" And she's like, "I'm glad you said that." And I love that part of it too, because I love that even if it's a post credit scene, it leads to nothing. At least they set up for something in the future, but it just makes you like, who the heck could it be this time for this part of it? So like in the concept of like the legacy characters, I do like how they were used. I would have liked to have Jennifer used a little bit more though, but I like how they used Carla in this situation though, because I was wondering if they would connect it back to the second one or just the first one. So I'm glad they connected it back to the second one as well. And for the other legacy character was Helen, which a lot of people were always wondering how they were going to bring her back. And they kept interviewing Sarah, and they asked Sarah, are you gonna be in the movie? She's like, I'm dead. How am I gonna come back? Like, there's like, it will sound stupid if I did come back somehow. And a lot of people were always like disappointed at the same time because she wouldn't come back. But I like how the way they used her too, because at one point, Danica is so dosed off in the police station that she starts dreaming, and in the dream she sees Helen with the crown, the way she looked and everything before, but her fiance is the one that's basically killed on the floor. And Helen starts talking to her, and I was like, I like the way they used her at the same time here, because even though she's dead, they still use her to help out in a way to progress the story here. And I like how they had the clam at the in the background too, like the whole thing from the parade before everything happened to her. So I like how she was used, even though that she's dead, that didn't bring her back to life out of nothing for no reason. And it makes sense the way they used her as well. So I'm glad they brought her back in a way. When she came out, I was like, there's no way this is happening. I was like, I'm glad she's here, because she kept denying it in every single interview. So I was hoping she was going to be a part of it somehow, aside from just the podcaster having her shirt. So I'm glad they used her.
Yeah, I'm glad they did too. I wish it would have been maybe a dream sequence that Julie had or something like that, because it
Hmm.
makes. I like, all we've established is that this character saw a picture at in a cemetery. Like, other than that, she wouldn't know what she sounds like or how she
Hmm.
like, or that, like none of that would have made logical sense in reality. I'm like, but at the same time, I didn't dislike the scene. It's who was having the scene more that bothered me more than the scene itself. The
Yeah.
scene itself was really good. I thought they did a decent job with the de-aging technology in this one to make
Hmm.
sure that she still looked like, teenage version of Helen
Hmm.
Shivers. So I thought that was fantastic. And to go back to that post credit, so I mean, I was so adamant that I wanted this to erase the other chapters of I Know What You Did Last Summer, because let's not kid ourselves, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer is a terrible movie. But if there's one silver lining in that movie outside of our original legacy characters of Ray and Julie, it was the addition of Brandy's character Carla. I thought that she was a highlight of that particular film. And if you're not going to erase the legacy, then I'm okay with how they brought her back to this thing, kind of thing. Because I think her and Julie teaming up again and everything, that's a fine thing. I do hope that it means we're going to see more of Danica in the next movie as well, too. Because my question is now, and I want to know your thoughts, is the connection going to be involving, because again, they're going after these characters, these legacy characters, is the connection still involving the church and Stevie and that crew, or does this connect something different back? I mean, are we gonna, is Ben coming back for another round of kill? Like, I'm not sure. And like, I mean, I made that joke. I said, knowing the way this one went, all of a sudden we're going to find out that Carla's the new fisherman or something, and she's setting this all up to lure Julie in or something stupid like that. But I hope they've got a good plan. I really do, because I mean, the setup for it, I'm like, I'm on board. I mean, there's more people behind this. There's something maybe deeper than what the standard Ray and Stevie whole situation is, kind of thing. Like, I'm still hooked. And that was pun intended. But I mean, as slasher film fans, we know we're going to get into these things. Like, even if this one wasn't the greatest thing it could have been, it was still good enough that I'll still give them my money for another sequel to this whole situation. And sooner rather than later, I mean, bring it on. I'm happy to do that. Any other thoughts before I mention about the box office? I'm curious to talk about the box office before we finish up here.
Yeah, I feel like more than anything, I'm curious to see how they will tie it up to the legacy characters at the end with the current storyline and the current timeline. So that's the part that just like, I'm looking forward to seeing that part of it, how creatively what route they pick. Because if you're gonna go for like this isn't over and you're talking to those legacy characters, how does that involve the new characters? Like you said, I would love to see Ava and the Danica getting involved as well. And being able to pay back that help that Julie gave to them to begin with. So I wouldn't mind seeing them again. I feel like they did great, both of them as characters. So I wouldn't mind to see them growing in the next one. But yeah, really curious to see what direction to pick for that.
I am too, but yes. So from there, we've heard our opinions. I will mention that the critics not so happy with this one. I was kind of expecting that. 38% Rotten Tomato from the critics. However, on the fan side, so going over to the fan side of things, it actually coming in at a 69% rating. So I think a little bit more fair on that side. I think maybe the critics are being too harsh. I'll agree. And there's a lot of people I respect out there that do reviews of horror movies that definitely were not fans of this, and the writing really killed it for them a lot too. The writing, it's a slasher film, people. They're not all going to be A+ writing ability or anything like that. It's a slasher. So if you can get past some of that, and again, even going back to the original, the writing wasn't dynamite in the original either. I mean, there was clear things in the original that had, their chuckles about them. So, I mean, erase that. It's not a big deal. I think that, I lean a little closer to the fan side. I didn't love it, but I didn't dislike it either. And I want more. Of course I want more. But let's talk about that box office, because I know on one of the other shows here on the channel that you're on, taking over, Ed had to go and mention something about the box office of I Know What You Did Last Summer, because he's so used to these wonderful Marvel movies that are made for billions of dollars. And despite the fact that they make a lot of money, he doesn't seem to realize that narrow margin that they profit on those things isn't exactly dynamite. So I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025 has been out for just about it. Well, by the time this drops, it'll be 1 week since the release time for I Know What You Did Last Summer. A small little horror film. And you know what? This one was made for $18 million, and to date, as of this recording, has taken in $27.8 million, well above its actual budget and marketing, and will probably bring in some more. And that includes once it hits digital, once it hits streaming, all that kind of stuff. The movie's profitable. That's what it comes down to. The movie is profitable. And you could talk about all the summer big blockbusters all you want and stuff like that, but a lot of them exist because of horror movies. And they exist because of movies like this, because horror fans are dedicated. We will go spend to go to the theaters and watch a slasher film, even if it isn't the top-notch writing of the year. It doesn't matter to us. We don't go to these movies for top-notch writing. We go to them because we want to have fun watching a slasher whodunit and seeing what kind of creative kills they can come up with. And yeah, I mean, I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025. it's still the best thing they've done since the original I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yeah.
If I was to rank them, if I was to rank everything they've done in this entire series, it would be the original one by a long shot is my favorite. This one comes in second. I guess I Still Know What You Did Last Summer would probably come in third for me. Then it would be the direct to DVD, I Will Always Know, and then that wretched TV series that Prime tried to put out. Just that's the worst of the worst, in my opinion. But yeah, no, I mean, maybe the bar was set low in terms of ranking these right now, but I think that at least this has got people's interest in I Know What You Did Last Summer back up enough that we could see better sequels coming forward from it too. So yeah, final thoughts or anything you want to add?
Thank you for proving me right, because I said it was profitable. That was my point all along. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's what we had to get in there, because Ed will like to take those jabs as much as he can, and we will make sure that he has to eat crow on that, because I Know What You Did Last Summer, Ed, has made money, and it will make sequels, and it will continue to keep production companies alive so they can keep making your superhero films so you can go enjoy your time at the movie theater. just saying. But yes, with that said, I am going to go ahead and say it's time to say our goodbye. So Astrid, your ticker's up there. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, what you got going on outside of Killer Cuts?
You can find me, as Bobby said, on Tuesdays on Twin, taking over with Old Ed and his rants. Now that we have a whole new section for his rants as well. For you watching this, since by the time this is on the channel, you can see my Slammiversary portion / thoughts on the OLE in my channel as well. So if you can go to both and hit the like button on them. You can also find me on Twitter, Blue Skies Astrid Pizarro, and Instagram and Threads is Astrid Pizarro 20. And if you're on my YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. Comment down below. Let us know your thoughts if you have seen this movie. If you plan on watching it, anything, let us know.
100%. As for myself, for things I got coming up, as this is dropping on a Friday, we would have just done Bring Respect Radio the previous day, and our guest, Akira Kwan. Go check that out on replay, now available. This Sunday, join us for Point of View, where we're going to be talking about the week in sports. We're going to be talking about those amazing semifinal matches in the Women's European Cup, and the final that is going to be hitting on Sunday as well too. Lots of other stuff to talk about there. And as always, you can catch me every Saturday with Papa Smokes on Prairie Pro Wrestling's YouTube channel, where we do the commentary for a new match every single Saturday. And we've got a lot coming up this weekend, a lot of new content that's going to be filmed and ready for that channel, so stay tuned. But as for channels, you're on OLE Podcast, and there is our ticker down below. We're on all social media as well as YouTube and Twitch. We'd appreciate if you enjoyed this show or you're interested in anything pop culture to go ahead and give us a subscribe here on YouTube, click the notification bell, give a thumbs up, and leave a comment. We're always checking those comments, want to hear from you, and especially, like Astrid said, let us know, did you like I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025? What are your thoughts? Where would you rank it? And what would you like us to review next time on Killer Cuts? Get your opinions in, and you got a good enough opinion, maybe it ends up on screen at a later date. We'll let you know soon enough. But that's going to be it for us here today. Thank you, everybody, for staying tuned for this wonderful review.